Oh, wait, we're live. Well, there we
No,
are.
there we go. Oh, it says error going live. Why did it say that? All right, let me try
No,
this again.
it's live. I see us. I can see the little people
We
popping
are
in.
live.
I see the chatters jumping into the live. We are fully live, my friend.
All right. We're still sorting out the tech stuff, but
We're still sorting out the tech stuff. So who's hosting? You're the host or am I the host? Am I the host or you the host?
I think you're the host.
I'm the
Host
host.
most of us.
Hold on, I'm adjusting my settings so our heads are at the same height. I don't want to seem taller than you because that's not true. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Substack Live. We are actually on Robbie's Substack Live, but I am the host. I'm taking over Robbie's Substack. Y'all pile on in. We should be live on both of our channels, hopefully, but if not, I'll post this afterwards on mine as well. Good afternoon. Happy Friday, Junior, everyone. And we are here with my good friend Robert P. Jones, who I get to call Robbie Jones because he's my friend, to talk about this new book. It is called Backslide. And it is a very prescient book in this moment, reclaiming a faith and a nation. I got to get the whole subtitle. Give me the whole subtitle, my friend.
Reclaiming a faith and a nation after the Christian turn against democracy.
There it is. And tell us when the book actually officially is available for sale.
Yeah, it is for sale right now, which is why we're having this conversation.
Perfect.
So available for pre-order wherever books are sold. Actually, if you want an autographed copy, my great local bookstore, People's Book in Tacoma Park, Maryland, is selling autographed copies. So you can go there. We'll post the links to all of that. You can find it, but it's in anywhere books are sold. It drops September the 8th, the day after Labor Day.
Fabulous. So you can make your order now, do your pre-order. That way you'll get your book right around the Labor Day holiday so you can read it. You can also buy the book at our shop, which is at shop.thejoyreadshow.com. We do report to the New York Times. So we want to get this on the bestseller list. So we have a pretty good track record, I have to say, on the show for bestseller. So please feel free. You can buy from our shop. You can buy from your local bookstore. Bookshop.org is another great place to buy books because you go on, you put your zip code in, they direct you to a great local independent bookstore in your neighborhood. That's a free ad for them. They are a sponsor, but this is not a sponsored ad. Just saying they are a great resource. I love them because if you live in like a small town and you're not sure if there's a non-Amazon bookseller in your neighborhood, they are a fabulous place to get books as well. So those are a few tips if you guys want to, and you should be supporting Robbie Jones because he's really one of the foremost experts in white Christian nationalism, has been studying it for years. And what have you learned that this book will illuminate for us about where white Christian nationalism is in this moment?
Yeah. Well, as you said, Joy, I mean, we've been tracking, white Christian nationalism for some time. And, the thing that we know is that while it is not anywhere near the majority of the country that backs this anti-democratic worldview, there's a majority of Republicans who now say that they really do want kind of a white Christian nation, right? That the U.S. law should be based on Christian values, that the U.S. should declare itself a Christian nation. So these are very much against the separation of church and state. They're anti-democratic. They're against the First Amendment of the Constitution, and yet this is the worldview that has now taken over one of our two political parties. It is the worldview that has taken over within white evangelical Protestantism. 2/3 of white evangelical Protestants, that base of the MAGA movement, now adheres to this. And here's the thing: we saw this coming, right? We are in Trump 2.0. We saw it before, but what we see now is actually, even in the last, this little bit of time that Trump has been back in office the second time, we now have clear evidence that it is taking root and being implemented in a way that it just wasn't in the first thing. So just a couple of reports that have come out. One called the Bright Line Watch. I love that name because that's what we all ought to be looking for. These bright lines are getting crossed almost weekly here, if not daily, with this Trump administration. I mean, they score democracies around the world on a scale of 0 to 100, with 100 being a perfect pluralistic liberal democracy, 0 being full autocracy. As late as the 2024 election, the Bright Line Watch survey scored the U.S. as 67, right, out of 100. So up toward 2/3 of the way toward full democracy. Certainly not all the way there. But within the first year of the Trump administration, we dropped from 67 to 54. That is an unprecedented drop in less than a year's time because of all of the ways that the Trump administration is undermining democracy. We see the same thing from another report called the Varieties of Democracy report. They concluded that after the first year of the Trump administration, we have wiped out 60 years of progress in liberal democracy in the US. That is, they conclude, again, this is an independent panel of experts concluding that we have gone back to 1965. We have wiped out all of the gains. And that really, if we, we should all remember 1964, 1965 is the moment when most historians say we first had a liberal democracy after the passage of the Civil Rights Acts. And we have essentially wiped out all of that progress in a year. This is more damage to democracy than Viktor Orban did in Hungary in more than 4 years. It's more damage than has been done in Serbia, India, and Turkey in a decade. This all happened within a year. So this book, I think, is really leaning into the fact that this is an unprecedented, urgent moment in our history.
I mean, that is terrifying. I mean, I'm just finished The Testament season 1, which is of course the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale. And it definitely, I for many years, including with you on my old MSNBC show, described what the right wants is The Handmaid's Tale. They see that as goals. And it definitely feels like the things that you see in the fictional Handmaid's Tale are what Project 2025 has done. You think that's fair?
I mean, I think that autocratic control, certainly, and we see, I mean, with the Handmaid's Tale, right? You see pronatalism, erosion of women's rights, hierarchical gender roles, this emphasis on so-called traditional families, which is nothing more than sort of like patriarchal control, like of everyone in the nuclear family. I mean, this is a vision that we're really seeing rolled out, in the MAGA movement, and it has,
Including the militia, I mean,
yeah.
it's interesting, the other day, I was thinking to myself, they call their killer militia ICE. In The Handmaid's Tale, they call it the Eyes. And they're really not different. They are an armed, black-clad militia, except for in the Eyes in The Handmaid's Tale don't wear masks. They're open, whereas the ICE are masked, but both of them are violent. They can detain anyone at will, citizen or not. There's really no reason for them to detain you. I think I saw a study recently that something like 60% of the people who were detained by ICE were citizens. And they're
Yeah,
holding, tourists. There's a tourist
yeah.
from Ireland who's been in detention for, what, 6 months? Like, this is what they're doing, and the ICE and the eyes are the same thing. So, like, down to the, aggression against LGBTQ people, in The Handmaid's Tale, they hang them, but they rhetorically hang them. They incite violence against them, particularly trans people, freely, openly on social media. So I see the only difference I see between and that both were a takeover, an armed militia takeover of the United States. Well, in this case, the people who did an armed insurrection in 2021 now run the country. And in fact, they're poised to get a big 1776 payout from Donald
Mhm.
Trump.
Yeah, so in the book, I think one of the, like I said, this is the most urgent book I've ever written. I'm usually long on analysis and short on prescription, and in this book, I have really the other way around. I mean, it's really time we sort of know what's happening, we can document what's happening, and for all of us care about democracy, and really the other piece of this, who care about the integrity of religion in this country,
Mm,
right? Because that's the other thing is that this movement has not only undermined the integrity of democracy, it has undermined the integrity of particularly of Christianity, in
yes.
this country by promoting a really distorted, really upside down world, and I have a whole chapter in the book on the way that empathy has been demonized by this movement, right? And this is not a fringy thing. This is not like the head of the Southern Baptist Convention or one of the largest seminaries in the Southern Baptist Convention, uh, uh, Al Mohler promoting this very idea. That's the largest denomination in the country, Protestant denomination in the country, promoting this idea that empathy is a toxic emotion, right?
Yeah.
And now just kind of take a step back from that, right? That this is our largest denominations really taking this into its mainstream thought. That's one of the biggest supporters of the MAGA movement. And so the things you talk about, ICE, right? This detaining of people, and we know also even people who they've detained who are undocumented. the vast majority of them have no criminal record,
None.
right? Been here for decades, like that kind of story. Uh, this sense of like, oh, and I should say too, 10,000 officers have been funded, right? ICE officers by this big beautiful bill, and we're going to see all over the country, are already seeing all over the country. Uh, we should just be clear about this: concentration camps being built in this nation, all over the country, to house all these people that they are rounding up here. And I think we got to just be really clear about what that is. And so you need to undermine things like empathy, things like love your neighbor, things like blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor, like all of these kind of things that are really at the heart of traditional Christianity. You really do have to undermine those things in order to harden people, right? To be able to accept what they're seeing right unfold right before their very eyes.
Yeah, and I think that is such a key part. And somebody in the chat was asking for the name of the book. I'm gonna show it. I'm gonna show you guys a picture of this is the book here. Let me make sure I'm getting
There
the
it
center
is.
here. There it is. Okay, you got a bigger book. Yeah, it's called Backslide: Reclaiming a Faith and a Nation After the Christian Turn Against Democracy. It's a very stark image, a very stark title. So talk about this because you've written White Too Long. You've written a lot of books that are very stark about white Christian nationalism and the white identity politics that has sort of fostered it. But in this case, you are focusing on the religion of
Yeah.
Christianity and the degradation of that. So walk me through what we will learn because you call it reclaiming a faith. So you're obviously talking about the way the faith has been deconstructed. Give us more about that.
Yeah. Well, as I grew up, I mentioned the Southern Baptist Convention. I grew up inside that world. So I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, part of the Southern Baptist kind of world. Went to a Southern Baptist college. I went to a Southern Baptist seminary. I was at church 5 days a week, as one does, growing up in that world. So I've deeply imbibed this vision. And part of what this book is about, I think, is going back over that landscape and asking what happened. Like, what happened that we could get to a world that was supposedly about following Jesus, to a world where empathy is considered a sin? Like, what happened to turn that world upside down, right? And it was certainly not always fully right side up to begin with, as you and I have talked about. But we are actually in a different era, I think, in these last 10 years with with what the MAGA movement has really done. And in the book, I talk about, right. The problem is we have democratic backsliding. That is absolutely true. So that's the title comes from that word backslide. But the other, I don't know about you, but I heard a lot about that term backslide. I heard a lot growing up,
Oh yeah.
and it wasn't about politics.
No.
It was about faith, and it was,
Sin. Yeah.
yeah. So you don't want to be a backslidden Christian. You don't want to
That's right.
backslide in your faith. And so this intersection, I think, of the way that really an apostate version of Christianity is undermining our democracy in a very active way is what this book is really trying to get at. So in the book, I really do kind of go back over that landscape, and I look at things like really fundamental things like the Bible. So how is the Bible being used and weaponized in this moment? Truth, the very concept of truth. How is truth being distorted and limited and contained? How are things like love and empathy really being turned on their head in order to justify the kind of cruelty that we see in front of us? So I kind of take on a journey, and I'm drawing on a lot of data, but I'm also drawing on just my own experience growing up in those worlds. And this book takes a more of a theological turn, really to
Yeah.
kind of challenge on their own grounds. The ways that I think the Christian faith has really been distorted in order to support this very dangerous movement.
Now, I don't know when you started writing this book because I know I was talking to you through some of the process, and you've been working on this for quite a while. But were you able to take into account? I mean, some of the breathtaking things that we've seen. We knew that Billy Graham was the pastor to every president. We would see
Yeah.
Billy Graham pop up in the White House even when I was growing up in the Reagan era, and we were going to go in the Reagan era. We're sort of the same age, close to it. But now we're seeing things like the Secretary of Defense praying
Yeah.
for no mercy for our Iranian opponents who we attacked,
Yeah.
and praying for no quarter. Bringing in a white Christian nationalist pastor who's a easily discredited figure, who's one of the people promoting this idea that empathy is a sin, and having him openly pray in front of and with members of the Defense Department. Just firing all the chaplains because they wouldn't go along with this wicked, cruel, twisted, fake
Yeah.
Christianity that is essentially Baalism. It's about violence, it's about murder at sea, and they're like, "No, no, that's what Christianity is, and we're gonna perform it from the pulpit of the White House and the Pentagon." Were you able to take a lot of that into account?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, one thing I should say is that my last book, White Too Long, was actually banned by Pete Hegseth
Yes, and expect this one to be as well.
at the Naval Academy. Before he went
Yeah,
to speak, he purged 384 books, about a
yeah,
dozen religion books, and all of them were books that took Christianity to task for its part in racism and white supremacy. And so it at his request was banned. So again,
but they
this
kept
kind of
Mein Kampf. Luckily, the
that's
folks at the
right.
Academy can still read Mein Kampf.
That stayed on the shelf while our books got pulled, from the shelf. So, but I think you're right, right? It is a violent version of Christianity, right? And we've seen this. And here's the thing: I want to just say this. I struggled a lot with how to set this book up, because I did want to kind of indicate the urgency, and so I began by talking about the problem of avoiding future regret was one way of thinking about it, and my friend Jamar Tisby, who I, I'm in close conversation with, has been saying over and over, "Hey, look, white people, if you want to know what you would have been doing during the civil rights movement if you weren't an
Mhm,
adult and alive and kicking back then, well, what you're doing right now is probably about what you'd be doing back then, right? So if you're sitting
yeah,
on the sidelines saying it's a pendulum swing and things will get better and I don't really have to do anything, and I'm really trying in this book, particularly to address white Christians who I think have a special responsibility because this MAGA movement really is a movement out of white evangelical Christianity.
yeah.
That means that if you're connected to that world, you've got a responsibility to speak up, and that's part of what I'm doing here. But when we've seen in the past, and we've seen it in a number of ways. I mean, that view of empathy had to be purged out of Southern evangelical Christianity to tolerate slavery, right? That there we've already been through this once. That vision of empathy had to be crushed out of German Christianity in order to tolerate what was happening in the 1930s around Jews in Europe. And so we know what happens, right, when this kind of embrace of violence, a squashing of empathy, and it gets all baptized in the name of Jesus. We know what happens in that world, and that's I'm really trying to say that without flinching here. Actually, at the beginning, you mentioned Mein Kampf. I actually go through and pull some of Trump's speeches and the things that he's been saying about immigrants are poisoning the blood of the country. Immigrants are vermin. That these are things you can find those phrases in Mein Kampf
Yeah,
applied to Jews, right? And
absolutely.
applied to people that Hitler was saying are like polluting the country. And this idea of kind of a pure ethno-religious state that we are seeing held up by the MAGA movement as the end goal and the end game, right? A white Christian nationalist state. Um, we know where this road leads, right? And we just can't flinch from that. And that's really, I think, what I'm trying to hold up in the book.
And, Juan Salinas in the comments asked, "Do you still consider yourself a Christian?"
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really notable. I mean, like I said, I've got a seminary degree, I've got a PhD in religion. But yeah, absolutely. I still consider myself Christian. And part of the reason for writing this book is to call on my fellow Christians to say, look, it's not enough to just kind of roll your eyes, or or blow off steam among your friends if you're fed up with or deeply disturbed by finding out that there's a concentration camp being built in the suburb next to you, right? It's time to stand up and do something, right? And particularly if you come out of that tradition like I do, and I think in some ways this book is in some ways my doing something, right? My trying to take
Yeah.
the skills that I've got, the platform that I've got, and saying like this is not business as usual. This is not politics as usual. This is not even kind of distorted religion as usual. Like what we're facing here, yeah, really we can call evil. It's dangerous, it's violent, and if we want a country and a faith that's left with any integrity, we're gonna have to stand up before it's too late.
And before I lose you, we're going to round out in a couple minutes, but I want to ask you: are there any pastors that you can point to that you can think of? I mean, Bishop William Barber is
Yeah.
one that is trying to do it, that are representing a forward-leaning version of Christianity that can defeat this. Can you identify any more of those pastors, and do you talk about that in the book?
Yeah. I mean, well, here's the good news, that, I think I've been invited to over 200 churches in the last, few years, and that's, after White Too Long came out, and these are people who are saying, and they're predominantly white spaces usually, not all, but predominantly white, and saying, "Yeah, we need to wrestle with this history because we wanna live into a better future." So it's not just I think I mean, the Barber, God bless William Barber, right, for what he's doing, there, but there is a whole, like, lesser known people you would not know,
Yeah,
who are beginning to stand up, right, across the country, both in local, I know pastors in Texas that have stood up against detention centers and concentration camps being built there. We've seen, like, some making some headlines, right, in Chicago and other places, of pastors standing up. And they're not all in, in big cities, or, I mean, some of them are in the South, and taking some, really challenging stands. And I think that's the other thing here, is that when you see someone standing up, right, it's time to kind of get behind them as well, because they're certainly getting plenty of blowback, the other way. But I do think there is, below the headlines, a group that has kind of been quietly getting ready. But the real question is, are they going to ultimately stand up? Because I think that's the moment where we're at, right? There's been a lot of preparation, soul searching through the Black Lives Matter movement, book clubs, all that stuff is great. But what I think I'm saying in the book is, like, look, those were preparations for the moment that we're facing now,
yeah.
right?
Uh, Pope
And now is
Leo
the time to act. Yeah.
Pope Leo getting a lot of shout outs in the chat as well. Yeah, he is
Yeah.
obviously, to me, one of the most important Christian voices for peace, for sanity. I love that he's American, that he can say the things he says in American English. I don't know if you had an opportunity, because of that happened so recently, to wrestle with the Pope Leo factor. But is there an ecumenical message in the book? Because there are Catholics that are struggling with this, who have Pope Leo to lean on.
Yeah.
Is that do you address that in the book?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that's right. That, one of the things I noted, in white evangelicals get all the press, right, and the
Yeah,
attention because they're the most locked in with the MAGA movement. But what I found, like, in White Too Long, and what the research shows, generally speaking, is that, in terms of Christianity, this is actually a problem that goes much farther than just evangelicals, right? So,
yeah.
when we looked at, like, systemic racism, and I had a thing called the racism index, in previous books, yeah, white evangelicals were off the charts, but white Catholics and white non-evangelical Protestants were not far behind those groups, in those measures. White Catholics voted for Trump 6 and 10. White non-evangelical Protestants voted for Trump 6 and 10. Right, Latino Protestants voted for Trump 6 and 10. Right, so I mean, this is it's a bigger issue, than certainly just one small group of white evangelicals. We've of course got JD Vance squaring off, with Pope Leo and trying to wag his
As
finger at
if
him, and
he has any authority or
yeah,
any knowledge, that he was like, he's been Catholic for like 8 minutes,
yeah,
and he thinks he can go toe to toe with Pope Leo.
yeah.
The book is Backslide: Reclaiming Faith in a Nation, after the Christian Turn Against Democracy. There it is. Robbie Jones. Oh, I put the camera wrong. There we go.
Fair enough.
Robbie Jones. Hey, hold on, the real one. This is the man who wrote The End of White Christian America, which was the first book that I had him on for, and he had just had the courage to publish a book with that title. It should tell you how hard Robbie Jones goes for defending the faith against these apostates. And when y'all hear me quoting and talking about white Christian nationalism, and the right and Fox News thinks, well, she just doesn't like. No, I'm a Christian, and I'm mainly quoting Robbie Jones. So if you don't like what I'm saying, you
Yeah,
may
blame me.
not want to read the End of White Christian America, or definitely Backslide or White Too Long. Every book that Robbie has written is the seminal book on the emergence of white Christian nationalism in America. I highly urge you to get a copy of this book. You're going to need to have it next to your book of the Constitution, which you should also have next to you at all times in this moment. Robbie Jones, I appreciate you. Thank you for writing the book. And I'm excited to continue our series on countering white Christian nationalism. And I thank you just for all the work that you do.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Joy.
Thanks, guys. All right, everybody. See you on the next live. Bye bye. Uh oh. And now comes the part where we try to figure out the technology of ending the live. How do we do that? I think you have to do it, Rob, because you're the one who started the
All
live, so you have
right.
to do it. I don't have the ability, so you gotta let us go. Peace out.